Welcome to the Westminster Effects Doxology Podcast, where we exist for the glory of God and the tone of his people. I'm Cody Fields. Go buy stuff for your guitar at westminstereffects.com. Join the discussion in the newly renamed, we're going to call it the Westminster Effects Green Room, because there was too many syllables before. And make sure you hit like and subscribe on whatever platform you're enjoying this from. I'm joined by...
Hey, everybody. Bradley Cox, pastor at Resurrection Church, Greer, South Carolina.
And I'm going to go ahead and apologize for my voice. I know I sound like a combination of a bad Barry White impression and a Waffle House waitress.
A little nasally Barry White.
Yeah. So I can't get enough of your scattered, smothered, covered, I guess.
Feels like it's been a while since we did this.
It has. It's been over a month at this point.
Yeah, I guess you got a bunch of podcasts at
the Fight Laugh Feast conference. So if you have not partaken in those, what's wrong with you people? Lots of fun episodes. James White, Dusty Devers, Mark Dewey, Justin Johnson of Dominion Wealth Strategists, and Keith Foskey. So 5 good episodes. So today we often, or I guess occasionally, not often, we'll break down song lyrics, typically of worship songs, and oftentimes with those worship songs, it's, oh no.
Definitely with some of them.
Definitely with some of them. Others, it's, oh, this is fantastic. So Skillet just put out a new album called Revolution, and I think it's pretty good. You should go listen. So I figured, let's break down some Skillet lyrics from their new album.
Well, before we do that, like, you just went and...
I did. Yeah.
You were like, what's the term when you follow bands around?
A groupie?
A groupie?
Yeah,
You were a groupie in London?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to flex like that, so thanks for flexing for me.
I think that's pretty stinking awesome.
It was pretty cool. Seth half-jokingly, over the summer said, hey, we're going to do this European run. We're ending in London at the Wembley Arena. You should come hang out. And I was like, that's cute. And then he brought it up again when we were hanging out with them in Carowinds, and Seth and my wife, Kristen, ganged up on me. I was like, fine, we'll go to London.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic. We went to Westminster Abbey. Actually went to church there. We went to
church at Westminster.
Yeah, we did. I didn't tell you that.
No, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, so we went to church at Westminster Abbey, the most high church setting I've ever been in.
Wow.
And there's communion service and all that good stuff. And ironically or fittingly or providentially, it was the feast of Christ the King. So the readings were Daniel 7, Revelation 1, which is what the 27:16 is referencing. And the passage in, I think it's John, where Jesus is being questioned by Pilate about him being a king. And so all of the readings were really good. The sermon had a line of heresy in it. So,
oh, really? I was going to ask you what the sermon was like.
It wasn't good. But yeah, so we went to church at Westminster Abbey. We went to Hampton Court Palace, which was Henry VIII's palace, and my wife is fascinated by the Tudor dynasty. So we got to the Great Hall and she actually teared up a little bit.
Wow.
It's like, I've been reading about these people for this long, and this is where they did all of these things. And we did the Tower of London, saw where Anne Boleyn was beheaded.
Wow.
And just all
the amazing history.
The depth of history in England is incredible.
Yeah.
We Americans often lop it off at 1776, but we really can trace our history all the way back there as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So
what was it like the concert? Were you on the front row? Were you behind the stage? What were you?
Right. So typically what we do is we'll spend roughly half the set in the sound booth with their sound guy, also named Cody.
Okay.
And so we'll spend about half of it there. And since we have all access passes, we'll typically go side stage to where their techs and monitors are and stuff like that. And that's where we can get better shots for content.
Yeah.
So you don't get the professional mix there.
Right.
It's more of you're dealing with afterthoughts of how it sounds there. But yeah, it's always fun. Yeah. Always fun to hang out with those guys.
I bet it's pretty cool to see that behind the scenes kind of operation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. They their crew is one, extremely professional, and they're very welcoming. And so Nick, their guitar tech, actually didn't know that we were going to be there. And I tapped him on the shoulder. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And, you know, it was pretty great. And, but yeah, like seeing all of their stuff and how organized they are it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool.
Especially being a gearhead and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So this one, we're going to end with my favorite song on the record.
Okay.
But let's start with their song "Fire Inside of Me." So we're doing two songs because there are fewer lyrics than a typical worship song that goes for 8.5 minutes.
Right.
So verse 1, "What's happening around me? I don't recognize this place. Like a vagabond, I roam with no home or peace. Don't tell me how to live my life. I know that I'm not fine." So knowing John Cooper just a little bit, it's a lot of his stuff to me these days sounds psalmish, in kind of the, "Hey God, why has everyone kind of abandoned you?" Right. Like him being in the music industry and knowing so many people who've deconstructed and apostatized. I don't know that that's what he's doing right here, but I could easily see that being the inspiration for those lyrics while keeping them vague enough to be applicable to pretty much anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. What is he lamenting?
Right.
Would be a question I'd ask. I mean, not that has to be answered, but it is a lament.
Right.
Which, you know, we need laments.
Yes.
And I said this the other Sunday. We were, I think we were in Psalm 42, and there's an interesting line in Psalm 42 where the psalmist talks about, "I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me or forsaken me?" And it's a contradiction. It's a self-contradiction to call God your rock and then say, "I feel like you've forgotten me."
Yep.
Is a contradiction. And one of the things I said is that I wonder in today's world how often we allow ourselves to even admit those contradictions or admit those kinds of feelings and thoughts, because it's so easy to just, when those emotions creep up or those thoughts creep in, to just distract ourselves with something, with our phones or other forms of entertainment, or even trying to anesthetize with something just to feel better. We don't sit in those kind of contradictions. And so songs can be helpful. The Psalms are helpful, and songs can also be helpful to just give voice to those laments. And it sounds like that's what he's doing.
Right. And it's particularly from the perspective of a musician who's had a career for so long in this industry, and he feels like a vagabond. And he's just like, "I'm not fine."
Yeah.
Right. And we need more songs that are honest about those times.
Right.
Should we do the chorus or should we do verse 2 first?
Either one, whatever you think.
Let's do the second verse, because I think eventually the chorus answers what he's lamenting.
Okay.
Verse 2, "Anxiety surrounds me. I don't recognize myself. Would you abandon me and go if my facade fell? You're the reason I can live my life. I need you one more time." So you have the parallel of before he didn't recognize the place he was in verse 1. Now he's not recognizing himself.
Right.
So it's gone from external to internal with whatever strife is going on. And he's wondering, it's kind of like with the Psalms, are you abandoning me here?
Yeah. So he's addressing God.
I would assume so.
Yeah. Would you abandon me and go if my facade fell? I like that line.
Yeah.
Because I think we probably subconsciously, if we have any sense of, biblical truth about us, think that we can fool God, think that we can hide behind
it goes back to the garden.
Yeah, it really does. We put our facades up with people, and we're able to fool them at least some of the time. And I think we convince ourselves that we can fool God. But it's a really honest question.
Yeah.
Would God abandon me if my facade fell?
Right.
And it's I don't know, ironic in a sense that the facade is nothing. It's not a piece of lead that he can't see through.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. So, all right, let's go to the chorus then.
Okay.
So you have a musical oh kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Am I still breathing? How do I try again? I can't live. Why exist?
Mm-hmm.
I want to change the world. I want to save the world, but I can't even save myself. Why believe in anything when everything you love is gone and left you numb? Is it too late to ask for help?
Mm.
Those are really honest questions.
They are.
And that I want to change the world and I want to save the world, but I can't even save myself is kind of like the real meat there.
Yep.
Understanding your own helplessness, your own depravity.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. So what makes you think that you can save the world? Right.
Yeah.
While also, it kind of reminds me of Paul in Romans with the Jews, that he would be willing to trade places with them, like be cut off from Christ for their sake. But I can't do that.
Can't do it.
It's not my job.
Yeah.
Like I kind of hear a little bit of that there too.
I read this and I think about it's possible for an unregenerate person to come to this place of despair.
Right.
But it's also part and parcel, I think, with the Christian life. When the gospel is embraced, there is in a sense like a mourning and a grieving that accompanies our gospel hope and joy, right? Like we find ourselves continually coming back to the place where I can't do this on my own.
Yep.
And I don't know any Christian that has grown completely out of the wrestling with my own soul when I come to the end of myself.
Right.
Where I do feel as though I can't live, I can't exist. I want to change the world, I want to save the world, but I can't even save myself. But I don't know, there seems to be a rhythm in the Christian life of coming to that point and then rehearsing the gospel.
Right.
And the prayer in the chorus or in the pre-chorus, or I guess this would be the bridge, which we haven't gotten to yet. The prayer is what sort of naturally flows out of that.
Right.
Coming to the end of yourself, and I must have you.
Yep.
It's desperation.
Yep.
And I talked about this recently. We don't like to be desperate. But yet, gospel hope, the joy of our salvation does include desperation.
Right.
A desperate reach for the God of our salvation. Yep. So
I left a line off. My soul's asleep. Light the fire inside of me.
Okay, so there's the prayer.
Yep.
Right, and that gets repeated in what I assume is the bridge.
Yep.
My soul's asleep. Light the fire inside of me.
Yep. And then
fire inside of me.
Yeah. And then you've got cold and numb. I need to feel alive. Your touch, your life, your fire. So who's he relying on ultimately? Is not himself.
Not himself.
There's this understanding of it really is all of grace. And if it's not all of grace, then it depends somewhat on you.
Yeah.
Right. Ergo, he has to have God act upon him. It has to be that way, or it doesn't get done.
Yeah.
And that's both in the moment of conversion and in sustaining.
Yeah.
It's all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. The gospel doesn't affirm my delusion of being a self-sustaining, self-determining being on my own.
Right.
It shatters that delusion. And that's painful.
Yep.
And I would say it's a pain that, in our worst moments as believers, we come back to. But it is God's kindness in that pain where we once again behold the death of our delusion, that I can be self-sustaining and self-determining.
The Puritans would call that a hard providence.
Yeah. And
I think they were exactly right in that. is God's kindness in putting you through tough things, which is why Ephesians 5 tells us to be thankful always and for everything. And it doesn't leave anything out.
Yeah. And let's not make the mistake of thinking that God putting us through hard things is simply, for that.
Right.
He wants
just
to
for
put
the sake of
just
it.
for the sake of it. It's his kindness leading us into deeper and deeper dependence. He's always going to do that. People say this all the time when they're going through hard stuff. The Lord must be trying to teach me something. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually put a specific on that.
Yeah.
He's teaching you to depend on him.
Right. It's not God being cruel simply because he's putting you through something hard. Was Tolkien cruel for putting Frodo through what Frodo went through?
Right.
And the answer is no. Tolkien was a fantastic author.
Yep.
How much more so God?
Yeah. Makes me think of a sermon I heard Piper do, The Ultimate Essence of Evil, where his text was in Jeremiah, where God says through Jeremiah, my people have committed two evils.
Yeah.
Forsaking me, the fountain of living water, and hewn out cisterns for themselves that hold no water. So what his argument was, the ultimate essence of evil is essentially the opposite of dependence.
Right.
Futile independence is the ultimate essence of evil, because the cisterns we hewn out for ourselves are broken.
Mm-hmm.
So to give voice to this kind of desperation, and then for the prayer to be light the fire inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great prayer. It's a great song.
Yep. Shall we move on to the next one?
Sure.
All right. So this is Not Afraid. This is my favorite song on the album. Yep. It's got some pretty juicy riffs. So Seth, good job writing the riffs. Here we go. First one. Escape from the past that was stolen, and all your toxic fumes inhaled, the scapegoat of angels who've fallen, but my soul is not for sale. So let's just stop there because it's a little bit longer of a verse. So, what say you?
Well, okay, so escape from the past that was stolen. What's he talking about?
Right. I think we'll maybe get there.
I don't exactly know.
Right.
Your toxic fumes, scapegoat of, we got angels who have fallen. I would assume we're talking about demonic forces here.
Mm-hmm.
And my soul is not for sale. I get that. I mean, for sale for what? I mean, what Satan's been peddling since the garden is, like we talked about the previous song, you can be your own God. You can be a self-determining, self-sustaining being. That's what he's been peddling.
Right.
And maybe that's what this is, an emphatic, no, I'm not buying what you're selling.
Right. I dig it. Especially the scapegoat of angels who have fallen. So the scapegoat of demons.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to chew on that phrase a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, a scapegoat being the
one who takes the blame.
Takes
Takes the punishment.
Yep.
So that's a pretty interesting turn of phrase there.
Yeah.
Even though you tore me up, left me with sores and blood, I was suffering. You could never break my will. It made me stronger still. I was smothering. I can't breathe.
That sounds like Job.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, that's what I thought of when I read it.
Yeah.
The first time I thought of Job, and it would make sense because
even if John wasn't thinking of Job, it makes us think of Job.
Yeah, and it would make sense because you've got Satan, the accuser, coming before God in Job, questioning Job's faith, and essentially trying to get God to make a wager with him that if you take away all his blessings and comfort and protection, he'll curse you.
Right.
And yet you come to the end of Job, and what we read is that in all these things, Job never sinned.
Yep.
Did he struggle? Did he fight despair and discouragement? Did he have questions? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But in all these things, he never sinned. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So
let's do verse 2.
Okay.
You thought you would always control me. You clipped my wings, my dreams in two. I guess that you don't even know me, 'cause I'll never be like you. And even though the threat is real, my backbone's made of steel. I'm fine suffering. And when the pressure's in my face, I'll never bow or break, 'cause I'm not afraid.
Mm.
So, I'm fine suffering.
Yeah.
That is not an American sentence.
No, no, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's not an American sentence. And I think the question that you would ask, regardless of, how you're coming to this song, believer, not believer, whatever, is I think you would want to ask, where does this confidence come from?
Right.
Because I think every human being has some instinctive sense about spiritual darkness that surrounds us. And even if you're not a believer, you'd have to be a fool to dismiss the notion of evil being present in the world.
Yep.
And there being a force behind that. And so I think we could all identify with the question of where does this kind of confidence come from?
In the face of the threat is real.
No,
there is a true threat. It's not a made up threat.
That's a great point.
And so my backbone's made of steel, particularly with so much of the conversation in Reformed Christendom being about pastors who have backbone, right? So with so many caving into the alphabet mafia or what have you, right? General wokeness and all that kind of stuff. We need backbones. And so if it's made of steel, that's a pretty striking image of, well, it's not riddled with arthritis.
Right.
It's not made out of Jell-O.
Yep.
It's not made out of paper. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to bend when you face that pressure in the next line.
Yes.
So, all right, chorus?
Yeah, chorus.
Okay, this is a little bit longer of a chorus. It's in 3 parts. Let's just do the first one first. Spent my whole life living underground, foot on my back trying to keep me down. Come too far to turn back now. I am not afraid. It's kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
The fact that there is some kind of force, however you take it, however you interpret it, opposing you, but at the same time, I have come too far. Like if I come too far, it's all wasted. So I might as well press on.
Yeah. I said this the other Sunday. The Christian life is an embattled life.
Yep.
And I would say every human being, even if you're not a Christian, to some degree or another, you would have to acknowledge that human existence is an embattled existence.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna fight something. Physically, relationally, corporately, spiritually.
Yep.
You're going to fight something. And so I think all of us get that line, there's a foot on my back trying to keep me down. Certainly we can self-sabotage, but there are times when we all feel like, this is out of my control.
Yep.
And the world's against me or something's against me. But I've come too far to turn back now. There again is that confidence. I'm not afraid. And you're still asking the question, how is that possible?
Yeah. I will keep the faith, never back down till my dying day, staring at death straight in the face. I am not afraid.
That's the most compelling part of these lyrics to me.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because again, I mean, I'm thinking biblically about that. I will keep the faith.
And not back down until you die.
Until you die. And again, this is not scripture, but having a Bible-soaked mind when you come to songs like this is so necessary, because if you understand faith to be a gift, and you understand that God not only saves his people by faith, but through the gift of faith, but he also sustains his people through the gift of faith.
Yep.
So
and I know that all of Skillet does believe that.
No, I know they do too. So I'm reading between the lines a little bit with you and with them. there's a scriptural foundation on which we could answer the question that gets raised in the song.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this confidence come from? Well, it comes from the gospel and the faith that God has given him.
Right. And staring death in the face.
Yeah.
And not being afraid. So our church just went through a loss.
Yes.
Our pastor emeritus, Pastor Barr, his wife, Miss Betty, as we all knew her, just died after a battle with Alzheimer's. What was that? Yesterday morning?
Yesterday morning.
As we're recording. So Monday, this will come out Thursday. And the funeral's going to be here on Saturday. And that's, it's a real loss.
Yeah.
There's real grief going on here. But we know where she is now.
That's right.
We know that she was able to stare death in the face and not be afraid.
And I think there's something in all of us, right? Even Christians, that it's a little bit scary to think about the process of dying. How is it that I might die? Right. Am I going to be martyred? Am I going to suffer with cancer for, a length of time, Alzheimer's, whatever? But there really is a difference. I mean, Paul talks about we don't grieve as people who have no hope. We come to death and funerals and gravesides with sadness, but not fear. And that's a huge difference.
Yep. So last part of the chorus, my life, my heart, my soul, I'm not afraid. My breath, my blood, my all, I'm not afraid. I dig it.
I like it. I mean,
John's basically saying everything that encompasses me.
Yep.
Whether it's biological or spiritual.
Yep.
Is all encompassed in this.
Yep.
He's all in.
Yep.
And because, reading between the lines, back to the I will keep the faith, because God is preserving him, that enables him to do that all the way down.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, you could almost think existence first, like my life, my heart, my soul, I'm not afraid. And then my breath, like that, my breath, my blood, my all, kind of maybe getting us beyond like biological existence to something greater, something eternal.
Yep.
But in all of that, he's not afraid. And I would think that what he's trying to communicate in this song is that the lack of fear and the presence of confidence is rooted in the faith.
Yep.
That leads him to not fear death anymore.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And if you take the fear of death out of the equation, that changes everything about the struggle. Like you even could sum up both these songs. The despair and desperation of life we're all going to taste. The spiritual battle we're all going to face in some way or another, whether you believe it or not. But if you take fear of death out of the equation, I mean, the author of Hebrews talks about that Christ had set us free from the slavery to the fear of death. Like if you're free from, and I think that helps us understand Jesus's, words that, whom the Son sets free is free indeed.
Yep.
Right. So, that would be another word that comes to mind when I read this song is a lack of fear means the presence of freedom.
Yep.
So,
yep. Love it. So my exhortation to everybody is go listen to the album.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It also includes an album or a song rather that John wrote for his daughter's wedding toward the end. So that'll be a tearjerker for those of you with feelings. And but yeah, it's just a good album, and it's their first independent album. They're not on a record label anymore. Their contract with Atlantic is up.
Wow.
And so they're like, no, we're going to do this ourselves so we can do whatever we want all the time.
It seems like it's going well for them.
And it is. Go see them on the upcoming Winter Jam tour. So that'll be here in Greenville at some point. I don't remember when, but it's going to be all over the country here in the next couple months. So go check them out.
Good stuff.
Any closing remarks on this?
Congrats to Skillet on a great album. At least the two songs I've read the lyrics for.
And check out the 2716 Seth Morrison distortion. So go love God, love your neighbor. Make some music. We'll see you next time.